think Andrew's philosophy on money was just don't spend more than you make, kind of an idea. And my background, I've been in banking for a long time, and everything was accounted for. I grew up as an immigrant. Our first place here was, we lived in an attic. Like, if you're not in the room, you were to turn off the lights.
Sometimes she would turn lights off if somebody was still in the room. Like, what are you doing? Kellie was down to the penny. I mean, and this did obviously lead to a lot of tension. I remember more than one argument. Like, I might have a super long week at work, tired of drinking water, I'm gonna go grab a drink from the drink machine or something like that. And we would get into some discussions over $1.25. It's like, well, we didn't budget for this kind of a thing. I was like, whoa.
Yeah. Use your fun money, babe. It's a Spanish expression. It's called tienes que guardar pan pa mayo. And basically what that means is like, you have to save your bread for May. Like, you have to think about your future because you don't know what can happen. And so I grew up very much with that kind of mindset. God began to do something in me in 2019. It was like towards the end of the year, I listened to this talk on generosity. But the thing that struck me in that talk was this idea of a graduated tithe. Like, every year, as his income would increase, he would give more. And I'd been a Christ follower at that point for 20 years maybe, and I had never heard of somebody increasing their tithe. God was asking me to practice this graduated tithe, not because of the money, but because I think for me it was like an opportunity to step into deeper trust with God. This whole time I'd been living with like a scarcity mentality because of how I'd grown up. I tithed 10%, and had that box checked. I was holding on to the money like this with a closed fist. And Andrew lived his life like this, like, okay, I'm just gonna trust God with what he brings. At that point, we had kind of committed or made it a goal to pay off our house. And so there was this internal struggle in me, like, Lord, we're gonna pay off our house in 2020. Like, that's the plan, that's the goal. And now you're asking us to tithe more, and that's gonna, it's gonna change things. So 2020 rolls around, of course, global pandemic. I had these moments of like, oh no, we have to like tighten up more. And then on the other hand, God was like, remember what I asked you to do back in December? What are you gonna choose?
My dad was self-employed, like her dad. And there was one month that things weren't going so well. And I remember Mom looking at finances and how are we gonna do this? How are we gonna make ends meet? And I was sitting on the sofa, and they were in the living room. And I remember my dad just walking over and giving her a big hug, and he's like, I don't know how this is gonna happen, but I know that God is real. I know that we can trust him. I know that we can trust him, and somehow he's going to make it work. And it just instilled in me this idea that if we're following Jesus, then God will meet our needs. So we decided that we would increase our tithe by a certain amount and then just trust God with whatever he might do. Not holding him to anything, but knowing that he will provide for us.
At the end of 2020, we felt like, let's continue to practice this generous living. And so we created our own little Be Rich fund to where if we see a need, we can meet that need because God has blessed us. There were checks that would come in that were unexpected. There were ways that God would provide for our children, like free pull-ups or money that we were not expecting, tax credits, things that I couldn't have budgeted. In the middle of a global pandemic, in the middle of stepping into tithing more and doing this graduated tithe, we were able to pay off our house. And it wasn't something that I could have budgeted and planned for. God totally made a way for us and just blew me away with his generosity. I can trust God to provide for me today and tomorrow for whatever that looks like, even if gas is $5 a gallon or whatever it is now. That was another, I think, shift in my journey with generosity.
We're different, we're very different, and he uses us together. And as long as our hearts are to follow him, to honor him, to obey him, like, he will use both of our strengths for the benefit of one another. It's a journey that we're on, really, I would say.